Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. Today on The Stacks Book Club, we have brought back author Vanessa Hua to help us discuss Lillian Li's book, #1 Chinese Restaurant. There will be spoilers today, so if you haven't read the book yet, go ahead and pause and come back once you've finished. Before we get to the episode, here's a little bit of housekeeping. All right, here it is, your weekly reminder. Everything we talk about on today's episode can be found in the show notes. There is a link there that will take you to all the books discussed today, as well as the social media accounts for the Stacks and our guests. Plus, if you shop through the links on Amazon, you're helping to keep the Stacks free. If you're looking for an amazing book recommendation, send us an email to askingthestacks@gmail.com. Myself and my guest will read it on air, discuss it, and then give you a personalized book recommendation or 5. So email askingthestacks@gmail.com with your name, what you're looking for, and maybe a few titles you've loved or hated. If you like the Stacks and want to support the work we're doing, here are a few easy ways you can help. First of all, join us over on Patreon. That's a website where you support the work we're doing and earn perks for yourself. We've got a virtual book club, we got inside access to the show, and we have an amazing community of other readers who love the podcast. So head over to patreon.com/thestacks to join in. The last thing you can do to help the show is definitely the easiest. Subscribe to the Stacks wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a rating and a review and tell your friends and family about the show. It goes a really long way to helping us reach new audiences. All right, now it's time for the Stacks Book Club conversation about #1 Chinese Restaurant with Vanessa Hua. All right, everybody, I'm back here with Vanessa Hua, author of A River of Stars. And today for the Stacks Book Club, we're talking about #1 Chinese Restaurant by Lillian Li. I'm going to just remind you guys, there will be spoilers today. So if you haven't read the book and you want to, pause now, come back, listen to us later. Vanessa, welcome back.
Thanks for having me on again.
So excited. Okay, so we always start in the same place. I guess I should do a quick, what is this book about? So #1 Chinese Restaurant is about a family that owns a Chinese restaurant in Rockville, Maryland. And it's about the people who own the restaurant and run the restaurant and work in the restaurant. And it's kind of a family plus. It's not a drama saga. I don't know. It's a family story. It's about being coming to America, opening this restaurant, being born in America. It's about a lot of different generations. So it's a generational family story. So that being said, not my best description, but we'll get there. What did you think of the book?
Oh, I loved it. And I think besides being this sort of sweeping generational saga, and it's told through multiple points of view, everyone from sort of the domineering mother that everyone discounts but gets the best of everyone, right, to sort of the sad sack son who can never get it right, and nothing ever goes his way. But I also really was intrigued by the portrayals of sort of the front of the house and the back of the house, because in some ways it's not just about family by blood, but also the ones that you make at work. And just it was really interesting to kind of see the ways in which some groups that are hidden or like people just aren't thinking of them in their fullness of their humanity, they really come to life in this book.
Yeah, totally. I had mixed vibes on this book. I couldn't help but think the whole time I was reading this book is a movie. Like, it felt like I wanted to be watching this story for whatever reason. And that, of course, comes into some of my bias, which is that I'm not a huge fiction person. So fiction is a little tricky for me when I'm reading it. I prefer to, I think, watch fiction. So I kept being like, this is a movie. This is a movie. This would be so fun as a movie. 'Cause I don't know. I didn't quite like latch into this book in a way that made me really care deeply. And so I think I kept being like, I just want to see them interacting, and like, 'cause so much of this book feels physical to me.
I think she does a really good job of sort of describing the body.
Yeah. Like, it just feels like, I don't know what that is. 'Cause I loved the story.
Was it because there were multiple narrators? You felt like you couldn't settle in on one, or
maybe that was some of it. 'Cause I didn't dislike the story. Like, I liked the story a lot. I just felt like I would have maybe liked it more seeing it, which doesn't happen to me very often. And I rarely read a book and go, "Ooh, that's a movie," And I had a little bit of that with your book because it is so sweeping, and they're traveling, and there's so much richness in the world that you created in your book in Chinatown in San Francisco that I was like, I want to see this. But my feeling about this book was slightly different. I don't know. I maybe as we talk about it, I'll be able to articulate better as we go. But I kept being like, oh, I have to go read my book now. I wish I could watch it. That's like kind of what I kept feeling like.
You felt a little bit at arm's length?
Maybe that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. I couldn't quite like get fully in.
Well, the characters are also all hugely flawed. So,
they are.
Yes.
They are for sure, which is definitely something we should talk about. Let's see. I'm trying to figure out the best way to kind of get into this story. Well, let's just start kind of with this like first generation American, Jimmy and Johnny. They're the two brothers. Jimmy runs the restaurant. Johnny kind of is like the ops guy, but he's far away. We don't kind of get to him right away in the book. And I would say, as there's so many different characters who take control of the story, I would say Jimmy's probably our lead, right? Our protagonist.
Right. Wait, can I swear?
Yeah, you can swear, you can spoil all of it. Welcome to the stacks.
Right. The fuck up that keeps fucking up, but is a dreamer too. So.
Yeah. He's kind of like the heart of the book, the center of the book. It kind of moves around him. What did you think of him?
As I mentioned, he made all these questionable decisions. He was doing things that were outright selfish and harmful.
Right.
But I mean, I found him very compelling. So I just wanted to see how he'd end up. And but yeah, I mean, I think sometimes readers want someone with a greater shine to them. And if but if you want someone who's like a bit more I don't know, of a fuck up then I think you'd like the book. So
yeah, he's kind of pathetic a little bit too. Like you want to like him, but then you're like, Jimmy, what are you doing? Like, how do you not see this? Like, it's like everything turns on him. But I liked him. I found him to be, he probably was my favorite. As far as favorites go, I don't.
Yeah. But I mean, I thought the relationship between Nan and Ajak was really sweet. Having covered Chinatown, as a reporter for many years, like I have a soft spot for those like rascally Chinatown men. And then, or just even like I thought the matriarch was really
I definitely want to dive into her because the thing about her character is she really doesn't get play in the book. Like you hear them talk about her, but we don't really see her until almost like a quarter, maybe a third into the book.
Yeah, there were and I just wanted to add, so I read it when it first came out, and then to refresh for this podcast, I listened to it as an audiobook.
Oh.
So maybe that's another way of getting that cinematic feel.
Yeah, how was the audiobook?
Oh, it was really well done. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always fun to revisit a book in a different form. Like if you read it, then to hit it up on audio or vice versa. I've done that a few times for books for the show, and I like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with Fang Fei, that's the mom. She doesn't. We don't hear her voice. Like we don't get to her narration until kind of deeper into the book. She kind of comes in and is like, I know everything. I know everybody. Like people think I'm nothing. And she weirdly is the one who gets her way the most in the book.
But I think that's sort of like the dynamic of a Chinese mom.
Is it?
Where you're the mom, you're like, maybe you're like going to discount her for whatever reason, for reason of age or accent or education or whatever. But then mom always gets her way.
Yeah. Like I don't know. I wonder, what do you think about bringing her in so late in the story?
I mean, there's just choices that have to be made in a book.
Yeah.
And, actually, in another version of A River of Stars, there were more characters. There were more POVs. Like there was a chapter from Daisy's point of view. There was a chapter from Daisy's boyfriend's point of view. And so, especially when you're working with multiple narrators in a book, I think just choices have to be made. And so, Feng Fei was just so like compelling. She really livened up every scene that she was in. But in some ways, maybe it was to her benefit because like the book sets her up based through her son's point of view, that she's like kind of easily scared or fragile or just, and so you get we're led to believe that she's going to cave to their demands. But then when you actually meet her, you realize, like, I don't know. To me, I kind of, the ways in which you can grow up with the family, see them near daily or monthly, and you still don't really know who someone is.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I ask you what you think of Bring Her In Late, just because I'm always so curious about how books are made, how stories are told. And I'm sure there's a version of this book where she's earlier, or she maybe doesn't have a chapter, you know, like I'm sure there's versions of this book where things get moved around. But I liked that we heard so much about her, and then she shows up and she's like, these fucking people are idiots. Like, she's like, Johnny's useless.
Right.
Jimmy is truly like Johnny's full of shit. Jimmy's useless. And I liked that's kind of that energy she came with. And I think that is like, I wanted to see her because I maybe don't know enough about Chinese culture and Chinese family dynamics. So it was hard for me maybe to understand some of this book. And so maybe that's why I wanted to see it. Because so much of family dynamic is also the eye roll and the like looks behind the back, right? So I think maybe that's some of where my wanting to see the book came from, was just my own ignorance. Because I don't I understand family dynamic generally, but every culture, every group of people has their own, their own, not stereotypes, but their own things that play out, that it's like, oh, I have a black dad. Like, if you have a black dad, you know exactly what that means, like that kind of thing. Yeah, I liked her. She was tough and smart. And I think, also sexism and stuff, we just assume that the mom who doesn't run the business and lives in the big house is an idiot. But you and I know, like we were saying last week, behind every working woman is another working woman. Right. Well, behind every working man is a badass boss woman who's helping. And I think that Lillian does a really great job of presenting that with the mom, because there aren't a lot of, aside from Non, there aren't a lot of other female. There's Non, Janine, and the mom. And then there's Annie.
Right.
But Annie is too young kind of to like fulfill that role. And Janine is positioned kind of in a different way. So I feel like she really holds down that idea of like pulling the strings.
Or there was this wonderful moment where Jimmy has some plan and she's like, that was my plan. Yeah, I told you that like,
right.
Decades ago when you were a kid. And he's like, I don't remember. She must be lying. But it's sort of like, you came from somewhere.
Right. Right. You didn't just create this. Just like your dad didn't just create this restaurant. He had some shithole. And I was like, maybe try a duck house. Right. Like, and this idea that women have to be quiet about these ideas.
Or not, or uncredited, or somehow you almost have to like make the other person think they came up with the idea.
Right. You have to make yourself small to get your great idea out, which is garbage. Such bullshit that's something, but it is something. That's a real thing. And I think this character, I just said that I thought Jimmy was my favorite character, but now as I talk, this happens to me every time on the show. When I start talking about something, like I'll come in and be like, I don't know if I like the book that much. And by the end, I'm like, this is the best book. Everybody go read it. And I'm like, Jimmy's my favorite. And then I'm like, wait. And I'm sure as we go through the other characters, I'm going to change my mind. But yeah. And especially because the dad isn't in the story.
Oh, because he's passed away.
Yeah. So he's not, we don't ever hear from him. And so much of him is through everyone else, that hearing her be like, this was my idea, or like, I helped your father with that. How do you think we got here? I just think she's really like the hidden matriarch, I guess. Right. But nobody credits her. They all think she's an idiot.
Well, and it's interesting. The book opens with the Bobby Hans, the founder's obituary.
Right.
And immediately the book, with this, great deal of certainty and authority that I admired, it was like every lie, every word was a lie. And It's just, I think this book is also about sort of the public face that we put out, and then sort of the private turmoil that we might have.
Right. And yeah. And especially with this immigrant twist on it, right? Like that it's not, that not only are we trying to keep things from public view, but also because we want to be accepted or because we want to make it like this public face because we're new here, right? Like, I mean,
well, we're trying to fake it until we make it.
Right. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
And it's just so sad when Jimmy's trying to open his Asian fusion restaurant and it's like, it's all wrong. It's not what people actually want. But yet he's been trained to believe that like, if you make it something more Western, it's better. And it's just like that whole notion of like wanting to be accepted in a society that's never going to completely accept you.
Right. Because in your book, we have the ham bao bao cart that Scarlett has, and she has her own little food cart. And that's authentic, right? Like, and people are obsessed with it. And that's what happens with Jimmy. It's like he opens his restaurant. Everyone's like, do you have from the other menu? And I think, I guess, where do you think that comes from? Do you think that idea of like making things less quote unquote authentic is more appealing? Do you think that comes from what people on the outside or like marginalized folks would think? Or do you think that comes from, I don't know. I don't even know what the question is.
Well, I mean, in Scarlett's case, she's a newcomer, so she doesn't sort of have ideas about like, let's make this fusion. Although certainly in Shanghai, the fanciest restaurants are going to be as cutting edge as anywhere else in the world. But, those are not the restaurants she goes to. And, a lot of immigrants actually are entrepreneurs do go into the food business. Right. Because those are the skills you kind of look like, what do I have that, what do I know how to do that like isn't here that could make money? And I recently met some women from La Cocina, which they just put out a cookbook. It's an incubator for low income, often immigrant women and helping them go from food cart to storefront. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So Jimmy, I think by contrast has been in the US for a lot longer. So his aspirations are sort of have been molded by like, well, he's also trying to get away from the shadow of his father.
Right.
So it's like, how do I do something? How do I stand on my own 2 feet and be a success, like in a way that is going to be accepted and sort of, to feel like I've really made it.
Right. Yeah. I have a question, but I can't quite figure out how to put it into the world. This happens to me a lot. So bear with me. Well, as a Black woman, I have a Black father and a white mother. And so there's a relationship between those two cultures, worlds, ideas that I have a understanding to that's different perhaps than people who are born to parents who are of the same group or whatever. And I feel like what Jimmy's reaching towards, in addition to getting out from his father's shadow, is that he wants to be seen as American, right?
Which is to say white.
Exactly. I should have done air quotes, but you guys can't see them anyways. But that he has this idea that he wants to be taken seriously as an American, even though his dad's success was deeply Chinese.
Well, or making food that was appealing to American palates.
But authentic to Chinese cooking. He wasn't fusioning. He wasn't like reinventing the wheel.
Although in some ways I would argue that American Chinese is its own cuisine.
Right. Well,
too.
Of course, I would argue that American any other cuisine, like Taco Bell is like, we're really stretching. It's its own food group.
But I heard that Taco Bell is actually popular in Mexico because it's this notion of like, well, it's not Mexican
food. It's American Mexican food, right? Like Tex-Mex or whatever it is. But yeah, like, so it's like so if we say there's authentic Chinese food from China, then there's Bobby's food that's Chinese but Americanized.
Yeah.
And then there's what Jimmy's doing. And like, what is that? What does that mean? Like, I feel like that's where the question is. There's a question in there about why if you have a successful parent who's doing this thing and you see the duck house and it's successful, why then is the jump to go further the white way?
Well, it's interesting. I think both who did Fresh Off the Boat?
What channel or what?
Or the author of the original memoir?
I don't know.
Well, I think, his dad owned steakhouses, and then he started doing like Asian kind of stoner food, and so too like David Chang, right?
Right.
Like Asian, but like kind of like elevated, or I don't want to say elevated because that places a weird herring on it, but like just sort of like transforming it and reflecting. I remember David Chang was being, very nostalgic about how you'd like to eat ramen with like a slice of American cheese on it because it's supposed to be sort of like greasy, good, and salty.
Okay.
But I guess where I'm going with this is that they're coming to this from, those two chefs are coming to it from a place of pride and not, you know what I mean? So Jimmy's like, I'll have this bulgogi burger, but his intentions are, it's starting from a place of like, how do I be successful in this broader world? Whereas, Fresh Off the Boat or David Chang, like it's like about, it's Fresh Off the Boat author is Eddie Huang.
Okay.
Yeah. But just that they're doing it, they're starting places from the food.
Yes. I think that's right. I think, yes, that is the answer to the question that I can't ask, right? It's like the difference between Jimmy's trying to get away from something else, whereas when done well, a Asian fusion restaurant can be great and can have a great, chef who's playing with the food because they're not necessarily playing with their relationship to their dad.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
Like they've taken time to actually make the menu as opposed to Jimmy, who was like, oh shit, I never taught anybody how to cook fried rice or whatever it was.
Yeah. Although there was that one scene where it felt sort of where the kitchen's a mess and it was like, it felt like he'd almost put off where he like stands behind the stove with some certainty
and like shows them what to do.
Right.
Which is a scene in my movie. Right? Like that was I think maybe the reason I wanted it to be a movie is because a lot of this book is really cinematic. I mean, there's a giant fire. Like that's cool to see on screen. But yeah, that like you think Jimmy's going to do it and he's figured it out and he realizes like, no, you have to come back to the food. Have you ever seen the movie Center Stage?
No.
Okay. It's a movie about dancing, but there's this scene where it's like my favorite movie. There's like the dancers and she's all messed up and she's not focusing on her dancing and she goes and she's like trying to do it and her teacher comes and she's like, you must go back to the bar. Right. And it's like, you think that Jimmy's going to have that moment where he's in the kitchen and he's showing everyone what to do. And he's like, puts the oil and he's like, more oil and everywhere. And like, but he doesn't actually have that moment.
Or like, it still is for naught.
Yeah. Cause it's not maybe coming from the right place.
Yeah.
Or something.
Or it's just, he just shoots himself in the foot like over and over again because yeah.
Valentine's Day is upon us, and I've got love on the brain. Love for books, duh, of course. Hello. Did you forget what podcast you're listening to? I love bringing you all great reads, exclusive author interviews, and behind-the-scenes book gossip. But I can only do that with your support over on Patreon and Substack. Our Stacks Patreon community, also known as the Stacks Pack, is where you can go for book club meetups, a private, very active Discord, and a year-long mega reading challenge to help you achieve all your reading goals. Plus, you also get that monthly bonus episode. Now, over on the Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, where I keep the book conversations going. I also give you a healthy dose of sports and pop culture, definitely some hot takes happening over there. And again, that bonus episode. If you don't have a few dollars to spare, don't worry. There are free options on the Substack and the Patreon to get you a little extra Stacks magic. Making this podcast is a total team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and my Substack, you allow me to support my amazing team that makes the show possible every single week. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other book lovers and support this indie podcast, come hang out with me on Patreon, Substack, or both. I would love to have you. And since we're talking about love, you can gift subscriptions to the Patreon and the Substack for that special reader in your life. For the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/thestacks. And for the newsletter, head to tracythomas.substack.com. And also, there are links to both in the show notes. Okay, see you in the Stacks.
Okay, let's stay with Jimmy, but move to Janine. So she's the real estate agent who, oh, well, you know what we actually have to do? We have to do the actual plot of the book.
Okay.
I'm like going on these little tangents. I'm like, we should talk about what happens. So the book opens. We have the duck house, the restaurant. Jimmy's father opened. Jimmy is meeting with this kind of shady uncle character, Uncle Pang, who he's got 9 fingers, which is like, don't trust this guy is basically what that is. You know, like that's what it feels like. And they're talking about the new restaurant, The Glory, that Jimmy wants to open. And it's kind of, Jimmy realizes that maybe Uncle Pang has some weird is going on with how he's going to try to finance the next.
Right. He'd
restaurant.
been promised, Uncle Pang promised to help him, but then he realizes, and then for that help, he realizes Uncle Pang's going to expect monthly kickbacks,
right?
In the same way that he got at the family's duck house, and so he's like, Jimmy would like to pay him off, and Uncle he takes the money, but then behind Jimmy's back, he then gets another fuck up that's in the kitchen, Pat. And gets Pat to agree, like, here's money if you will light the dumpster on fire. But unbeknownst to Pat or to Jimmy, Uncle Pang has sort of sprayed accelerant all over the walls. So that is not just going to be a dumpster fire to scare people. It's going to burn the whole place down.
Right. But okay, is that was the original plan that Uncle Pang had. And then Jimmy's like, don't do it. And then Uncle Pang's like, fuck you. You're going to regret the day you messed with me, kid. And then they still light the restaurant on fire. That was confusing to me because I thought that what had happened was that Jimmy had said, never mind, I don't want your help. And then he was like, oh, you don't want my help. You don't want to give me kickbacks. You're going to be upset. But the original plan was to light the place on fire anyways.
No, I don't think Jimmy knew that.
I thought Jimmy realized that when he's like, oh, it's not investors. Like, right? Jimmy has the moment where he's like, oh, I guess if it was investors, he would have said investors.
Right. But I'm saying that Jimmy brought the $10,000 to the meeting thinking it could buy off Uncle Pang,
right,
not knowing until then that
the plan
was
right,
to burn down the restaurant.
Right. But so the plan was to burn down the restaurant, and then they still burned down the restaurant, but it's more of a revenge burn down at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's more like a frame up job.
Well, because
the insurance
it's sort of like, it's almost like, I don't know if Uncle Pang's like, well, how badly do you want this restaurant? Maybe he wouldn't have hired someone who is so ethically fraught, right? He could have hired someone else to do it and get away with it.
Right, like an outside person, not someone whose mom has worked at the restaurant forever,
right,
who also works there,
right,
who's sleeping with the brothers, with
the number one oldest waiter,
yeah. Well, no, and Johnny's daughter Annie is sleeping with Pat. Like like Pat's really in the muck for someone who's worked there for like 6 days. I'm like, how are you so inside?
Well, sometimes when you're the young hot guy, what is it, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, or like,
exactly.
Yeah, he's like
the new fresh babe in town, but he's just really deeply involved with everybody.
Yeah.
So Pat is hired by Uncle Pang to burn down the restaurant, but he's just hired to light a dumpster on fire.
Yeah.
Which is also weird. It's like you're giving him a lot, like $10,000 to light a restaurant, like to light a dumpster on fire. But 16-year-old kids, I guess, don't think this way.
Yeah.
So the restaurant burns. So Jimmy wants to open his restaurant right away. And so that's kind of like the plot, opening where we kick off.
The inciting incident.
Very good. Did you get an MFA in creative writing? It's like, feels like that's straight out of a textbook. But yeah, so that's like the premise. That's like the world in which we're functioning. But throughout the book, we're understanding the past of these characters and their relationships. So Pat's mom, Nan, is the waitress turned manager. She has a weird...
she had a work husband in Odd Jack.
That's it. Yeah. A work husband.
For like 30 years. But then it comes out that his wife, who has cancer, has left him, and that sort of opens the door to them to sort of falling into bed together and trying to seek comfort into each other. And
yeah, it's a work husband that there's an emotional
an emotional affair.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I feel like some people have work husbands where it's like, that's just really my work husband, but like, I'm not into him. But they were into each other.
Yeah.
In addition to being confidants and best friends. So you mentioned you really liked that storyline.
Yeah. I just thought it was, I mean, I think just him worried about like his toenails and who would,
right.
like just the deterioration of his body. Like there was just an examination of his mortality to like have gone from being sort of strong and sure of yourself and careless with your body because you can be, and just an acknowledgement of your mortality, whether it's, you know, within the next year or within a few years, just like at that point in your life, just figuring out like, how do I want the rest of my life to go? And just who have I been? Have I been the person I want to be to the people that matter the most to me?
Right. And in this world, in Lillian's book, she really makes the restaurant kind of like a suck for everyone who's involved with it. Like they don't have lives outside of the restaurant. There's no, feels like everyone's working a double every day. You know, everyone has a day off, but it feels like the people on the outside of the restaurant are really outside. So like Nan's husband, Jack's wife, the mother, like those characters, though they're involved peripherally, they really aren't at all part of the world.
Well, I've read a number of restaurant memoirs. Like some of them set at like the very, you know, glammy New York scenes. But I mean, it's similar to that too. It's like it's nights and weekends, the times in which you would see other friends and family, so that your work does become your friends and family. And then you sort of, especially if you're struggling at the poverty line, then you are pulling all the double shifts. Right.
Exactly. Excuse me. Exactly. And so like Pat just has a lot of feelings about his mom because she wasn't around, because she was working and now he's working there. And he
is resentful.
Yeah. He doesn't want to be there.
Well, and then but it was interesting. There's a point at the end of the book where Nan is no longer working with those coworkers she worked for decades. And then she's like, yeah, we run into each other at Costco. And it's just sort of like, I mean, it's sad but inevitable, but that the friendships that are based on context and about like sort of a shared, I don't know, time schedule, like will go away once that goes, that schedule goes away.
Yeah. Which is it's like sad and life.
Yeah, exactly.
Like not shocking at all.
Yeah.
But still sad because they worked there for so long.
Right.
And you get the sense that the restaurant under Bobby, the father, was a lot about family, and it seems like he kind of maybe put up with people doing things because he understood that it was a place for people to work and it was their place. And it sounds like when Johnny understood that a little bit, but when Jimmy is running the restaurant, he's all about business and numbers and these types of things. And I think that is really what ultimately might have made that those relationships fall apart in the end, because it wasn't as much about the family inside the restaurant.
Right.
Under his management.
Yeah. Well, or just the very fact that, I mean, it was probably, I don't remember what was spelled out, but I feel like it was the father's doing to just keep the old waiters. Yeah. You know, and instead of just like churning them out once they weren't as strong. And and that Jimmy continues the practice because that's what his father did, but like resenting it.
Right. And then Johnny is the one who, I guess, understood it because he's the one who brought back Odd Jack, right? He's the one who was like, no, he works here now again. Yeah, because I think that's a hard thing to understand when you're young, right? It's like, oh, I want to make money. I want to, his eyes on the glory. Yeah. And it's not about the duck house, so I think it makes sense why he does it, but it's shitty.
Well, and then it blows up in his face. There's a moment in where he's like hired white waiters and the kitchen staff is Latino, and then the carvers are Asian, and like he realizes like there's no way to communicate.
Nobody understands each other. Yeah. Nobody has any understanding. They don't even have the same language. They don't have the same understanding of service. And,
right. There's no shorthand that can develop even though from people from different cultures that do develop once like a restaurant's been running for a while, but like to have totally new people who are new to each other who just don't understand like what's going on.
And like some of them do have a common language from the old restaurant, which is probably getting in the way of
forming a new one.
Exactly.
Right.
It's like he's just such a bumbling. Yeah. But the thing about this book that I did really like is that it has a lot of joy to it. There's there's sadness in it for sure. And there's a lot of heaviness, but she's found a way to kind of make it fun or joyful. And I really appreciated that about the book. I don't know if you had that same kind of feeling.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, even in the most tedious, backbreaking existence, there are those like small moments of joy, whether it's like Nan and Ajak getting looped on cocktails,
right?
Like, that they're testing out, or just even that sort of weird power moment where he massages Janine's feet. So,
right.
But just like all that pain, all that anxiety, this fleeting moments of connection.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's talk about Janine. So she is the real estate agent that is hired by Uncle Pong to help Jimmy with the glory when Uncle Pong and Jimmy are working together to create the glory. And she's apparently a babe, and Jimmy wants her bad. And so she's interesting because she's presented to us as kind of a shady character slightly, but we are told that we maybe want to like her. She's a single mom. And then her and Jimmy have a thing. I don't know. I didn't love her. I wanted to love her because I always want to like the female characters. I just always want to be like, the guy characters suck and I love the women. Like when I read Shakespeare, I'm like, oh, only the women matter. Everyone else is useless. But I maybe missed her. I think maybe I didn't understand her. So I'm curious what you think. I'm hoping you're going to make me fall in love with her.
I mean, I just think it goes back to no one is going to take care of her except for herself. And
right.
So even if she presents as, I don't know, greedy or like not Mother Teresa, let's say,
right.
Like I could kind of understand what was motivating her.
Yeah.
Especially, and but I think also for me, what was interesting was Feng Fei, the mother, kept referring to her as that peasant girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, or even going so far, like, you're dating her. I don't want like peasant grandchildren.
Right.
But just, I don't know. I think she was an interesting presence because it was sort of like going back to that idea that no community is a monolith. Like just because you're both Chinese an immigrant too doesn't mean you're going to get along.
Right. Of course. Which I do love. I always love I think authors of color inherently understand that idea that no community is a monolith.
Yeah.
And so they always do such a good job. And it's like when you read books by white people about other where they try to write about other groups, you're like, have you only met one Chinese person?
Right.
Like what? Yeah, I mean, I felt like I understood her. Like I got, she's got to figure it out on her own. She's indebted to Uncle Pong because she had a drunk driving
conviction.
Yeah. She did something not great.
And he got her abusive husband deported.
Yeah. And so he kind of like took care of her. So she feels indebted to him, but she's trying to figure out how to get out on her own. But I think where I got caught up on her was that I don't know that I ever fully felt like I understood her. Does she have her own? Does she narrate her own, or like
she never has her own point of view?
I think that's probably what it was, is that I couldn't quite figure out what her angle was. Because a lot of the book is one character talks about another character, and then we get to hear from that character and see like, oh, it wasn't what we thought. And I think with her, we're hearing about her from so many different people, but we never quite get her.
I guess, maybe she's a little bit more of a cipher, but I mean, at the same time, you have to make choices.
No, of course. I think that that's probably what keeps someone like me like further away from her, is because we aren't allowed into her. When you have to make those kind of choices, is that something that you as the author understand, or is that something that like when you're writing, you're like, okay, this is not all going to make it? Or do you feel like your editor comes in and is like, listen, Vanessa, I really love the Janine chapter, but it's got to go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Not for this book specific, but like when you wrote River of Stars, you said you had other characters, other points of view. How does that editing process work? Is that something that comes from you rereading your book, or is that something that comes from someone on the outside?
So when I wrote with multiple narrators, I knew it was a risk, because I think when there is jumping around, sometimes people can feel distanced. And so, but that's how I felt like the novel, that's what I strive for in that draft. But then it just, I don't know, you hear things like, oh, I'm not connecting with the characters. And then you just kind of realize, well, Scarlett was always sort of the main character.
Of course.
So she sort of dominated. But then even then, like, I got to keep Mama Fang. I got to keep Bas Young. And even though I remember I was talking to some other agents who were like, oh, I think Bas Young could be reduced to 2 paragraphs. And I was like, I don't think so. But there was even a whole chapter devoted to Old Wu and his interlude in China when he goes off to find a wife, which ended up in my short story collection.
Oh, it did.
Deceit and Other Possibilities. But I guess I'm saying, so once I got to the point that I realized on my own, no one told me specifically, like I knew that it was mainly going to be Scarlett's book, but with some chapters with Bas Young and Mama Fang, it was, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 rounds in with my editor at that said, we need 1 chapter of Mama Fang earlier, because we jumped into her point of view at like chapter 8 or something later. But she's like, we just need something like 3 or 4 pages just to kind of cue us in that she's going to show up again.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the part where someone else might come in and guide that. But,
suggest that. Yeah.
Yeah. But otherwise it's something that you kind of understand.
Or just, I think my editor was just, it's interesting. She could have said like, take her out, like don't, but I think she understood my intent, why I wanted Mama Fang to have her own chapter. And I think the mark of a wonderful editor is like being able to like help author realize their vision of the book. And that's why she suggested, like, I think you need this chapter earlier.
Interesting.
Like another chapter earlier.
And has it ever happened where something like that, where you put the chapter earlier or something, and then your editor's like, still doesn't work, she's got to go? Like, are those like, not fights, but are those kind of conversations that happen?
Well, there was this whole thread when Bas Young goes hunting for Scarlett. There's a whole like subplot in that chapter involving the blessing scam, where these monks will dress up, these con artists will dress up as monks and like predict the future, but like con you out of like a large sum of money.
Okay.
So my editor, I think, rightly pointed out, there's this sort of like the celestial goddess in the book, which is sort of this mashup of some different religious movements that have emerged from China. And she's like, I think the fighting con artist monks and the celestial goddess, like they don't both need, those elements don't need to be in the book.
I see. So then that's like, okay, you kind of go back and pick what you think is the right one.
Right. And I think if I'd really wanted it, I guess I could have pushed back, but I saw where she was coming from in terms of helping me birth, the version of the book that felt right to both of us.
Right. Because sometimes creatives, I'd like to include myself in that category, we need someone to be like, we need you back. You need to come back. Like, because when you create, you kind of can go all these different directions. And then that's why there are editors, because someone needs to help you and say like, okay, Vanessa, you're the creative. You've made all this amazing stuff. Now, how can we bring it into being its best version? And sometimes that means like taking things away.
Yes.
Or adjusting things, like getting rid of things that are great and wonderful and can stand on their own as a short story, but they don't serve Scarlett.
Right. They don't serve the larger story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, this was something that I really wanted to touch on, which is food as kind of a character and a theme. Obviously, we kind of started there, but I got tripped up on my own question. But it's huge in this book, obviously, a book about a restaurant, but it's also something that's really big in your book. And I found in books that I've read that touch on immigrant families or immigrant stories that food does become really important. And I wonder if that is I mean, and that spans all different, that's not just Chinese stories. That spans all different kinds of people on those stories. And I wonder if that's something, my speculation would be that because food is something you can take with you, even if you can't take it with you. You can take a recipe or the way you make something anywhere. If you're an immigrant coming from America to another country or coming to America, you might not be able to find the exact same ingredients, but you can find a way to make a food. It's kind of like an oral history. It can go with you without your house can't come.
Right.
All your shoes can't come.
Yeah. All your relatives can't come.
Right. So I wonder if you have any idea or any feeling of why food does become such an important part of immigrant stories.
I mean, I think it's, as you're saying, you adapt it to sort of, you take it from your homeland and you adapt it to where you are to make yourself feel at home. So,
right.
I mean, so food is a metaphor. It's like a stand-in for culture, for connection, for legacy. But I mean, food is also food. You digest it.
I mean, you need it.
You need it. And so, as I mentioned, I think there are figures out there, but I think a lot of immigrant entrepreneurs really do get their start in food, not because like they were amazing chefs back in the old country, but because this is like the skill they have, or this is what's in demand for them. Like they kind of look over their portfolio, or they look over like what is it that I can do to make money, you know?
Right.
And so this is one path into it. And so, but you know, it's interesting. Sometimes you'll get those notes in workshop, or I'll talk to other writers of color, and then they'll get a note from someone that says, "Oh, I think you should have more food." You're like, the story has nothing to do with food.
Well, that's kind of the other part of it is I do wonder, because I see it so much, if it is something that is like expected or like pushed on authors of color because it's something that white audiences can understand.
They can digest it.
Boom, there it is. Because like, look, everybody eats. So it's interesting that in stories about like white people in America, there's not a ton of food often. But like, how come we're not, like how come they're not being told to put more food in?
Right.
Obviously a book about a restaurant is going to have food in it. Like I feel like white, black, brown, otherwise. But it does come up a lot. So I wonder, I have always wondered about that. I don't know if you read Crystal Hannah Kim's book.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah.
We did on the show. I loved it. And we talked to her a little bit about food. And one of the things that she said, if I'm remembering, this was over a year ago now, but she was saying that it was important to her to have the food because it was something that was important to her, Crystal. So it was, and because the story was kind of like loosely based on her grandmother, that if the food had gotten from her grandmother to her, that it obviously needed to get there, like that she was building that bridge.
Or just even the way the book opens, where they're just like looking for food, and like the brother's sick, and just like it just made me so anxious. I mean, especially when people are sort of in perilous economic situations, like how food takes it's about sustenance too, as much as about culture.
Yeah. And how it's all consuming in a refugee story, like that you need the food, you need it. And so it becomes the thing that you think about and talk about.
And the man who can bring a chicken is like very important. But you know, A River of Stars, I also want to say the food plays a role because it's situated in a very specific point in time in San Francisco when there was a creme brulee cart, and like no one was doing pop-ups yet. It was like this weird thing, like track them on Twitter, and like there's a little bit Wild West in the way it's more formalized now with food truck parks and things like that. So that's how someone like Scarlett, who's a newcomer but could find an opening, because it was a bit less regulated, let's say, or they were still figuring out what the regulations would be. So that's why. And then also with the stuff with marriage equality, like that was also all happening around 2013 too. So for me, for A River of Stars, it very much was the intersection with food is situated also with like sort of a point in time in terms of thinking about entrepreneurship in San Francisco.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting that you said that so many immigrant people immigrants come here and food is their way into, because there's also always that like, model immigrant, like it's like they come in, they're a scientist or they're a doctor. And if you're not that, if you're coming for any other reason and you don't necessarily have a plan for financial gain, if you don't have a plan of what your job's going to be, it's like, well, what are my marketable skills? What are the things I'm able to do? What can I bring to the table?
My cousin's father got a PhD in economics, and he worked as a waiter at a local Chinese restaurant, while he was in school, and then he ended up buying the restaurant and running the restaurant.
Right.
So,
wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and then I think my grandma cooked at it for a while. And then I think another uncle like tried to buy a Long John Silver franchise, but I remember going and it was like dead empty.
Ooh,
so,
yeah.
So
not just people who don't necessarily have a plan, but people who do have a plan too.
And then realize like, well, maybe this is the best option for my family.
Right.
Yeah.
Because this is a way to make money and that's what we need right now. Okay. Before we kind of wrap up today. Oh, there was one scene in this book that I just loved so much that I just want to give it a little shout out, is the scene between Odd Jack and his wife when she's in the hospital and they're kind of like communicating for the first time in 50 years. I thought that scene was so beautiful.
Yeah, it was very, really emotional. Just like the fact that the things that couldn't be said, or it goes back and forth between like, oh, maybe we could go back to sort of joking around with each other, but then her being sort of getting caught up and realizing like, but you are my husband and you are my wife, and just it felt very real.
Yeah, and it had a slightly different tone than the rest of the book. So as I was reading it, I kind of was like, oh, this thing, like something is happening in this moment. I just thought it was a really fantastic scene. So shout outs to Lillian Lee.
Yes.
I don't know. I think that's hard to do, right? To change tone in a book, especially so late.
But I felt like it was right for those characters.
No, totally right. Like it felt right, but it almost had like a gravitas that wasn't necessarily present in other scenes in the book. And it just like, I don't know. It's like in a movie, like there's the scene towards the end where you're like, if you nail this scene, like you nailed it. And I felt like she really that seems just really special.
Yeah.
I just loved it. Are there any other things that pop out at you that you wanted to discuss about the book?
I just, I love just with books, like in the ways where you realize like, oh, our books could be friends with each other.
Totally.
There's another book, What We Were Promised by Lucy Tan, which also is about sort of like upstairs, downstairs, like, the wealthy Chinese and then their servants, and just sort of characters that you're like, there's like a resourcefulness or a wiliness, similar in those two books too. So
before we get out of here, we always talk about the cover and the title. So the title, Number One Chinese Restaurant. What did you think of it?
Oh, I thought it was fun. It because I think I've actually been to the restaurant where Lillian worked, and that inspired it. It's like in Falls Church, Virginia, and you go there, and it's sort of an old school banquet hall type place, and it's like covered with like all those old photos of like presidents from 4 or 5 administrations ago.
Right.
And so it's just and then just the number one Chinese restaurant. Like I think, on one hand, there's like this obsession with being VIP and number one. But on the other hand, you'll like have the pho restaurants that are like number 5 pho Huang restaurant, right? Where it's like, on one hand, it's like number one means like, it's like top restaurant, but it also kind of almost implies like there's just, again, turtles all the way down. There's just like so many Chinese restaurants.
So many options.
Yes, there's so many options. And then, yeah, I mean, I think the duck caught in the pinchers of a chopstick is very eye-catching and sort of like, again, speaks to the larger themes of like feeling trapped by legacy or culture or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that the title and the cover are great on this book. I felt like I knew what I was getting into. Like the tone feels right. There's nothing I hate more than when I look at a book and I'm like, oh, this is going to be like this. And then I start reading it and I'm like, wait, I'm so confused because I know you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but that packaging is part of the experience of reading a book. If you're reading on a Kindle, maybe not so much because you don't have the color, but if you're reading it you're looking at it, if you're picking it up from a bookstore, like it does, it shapes with your mood. And, so I felt like this was really right on. The green I really love. The border I really love. And the font of Number One Chinese Restaurant I really love.
Right. And then the fact that like the duck is squawking out a novel is so fun.
Yeah. I just think it's really beautifully done. Just feels like right on.
Yeah. And I like that there was in the flap, the genealogy.
Yeah, you have the hardback. So in the paperback, it's just like a few pages in, but I loved the family tree.
Yeah.
I need a family tree.
Yes.
If you've got a family, I need to know about it. I need to know who's who. Because in the beginning, before I knew all the characters, I was constantly flipping back. And then when the mom finally came in, I was like, wait. Let me go back. Let me just double check. But I appreciate that so much in a book. Okay, I think we're all set here. If there's anything else?
No, it's been a delight talking about books with you.
It's been so great talking with you. You guys can get Number One Chinese Restaurant. It's out in the world if you haven't read it yet. Sorry, we spoiled it. And then, of course, Vanessa's book, A River of Stars, is also out in the world. It's in paperback. It's in hardcover. It exists. You can listen to it. You can do all the things. So go check it out. Vanessa, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And we will see you guys in the stacks. All right, that does it for us today. Thank you all so much for listening. And thank you to our guest, Vanessa Hua, for joining us for the Stacks Book Club. You can find everything we discussed on today's episode in the link in the show notes. Make sure to get your book recommendation read on air by sending us an email at askingthestacks@gmail.com. For more from the Stacks, please follow us on social media at The Stacks Pod on Instagram and at The Stacks Pod _ on Twitter. And check out our website, thestackspodcast.com. To join the Stacks Pack and get inside access to this show, head to patreon.com/thestacks. Make sure you are subscribed to this show wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're listening through Apple Podcasts, please take a moment to rate and review the show. Our graphic designer is Robin McCrite, and our theme music is from Tegirigis. This show was created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.